at this point you're entertaining delusion, and you're
sheepdogging.
Yeah, your missteps are your own at this point. You're no longer being misled. You are doing this all on your own.
I mean, in this sense, Bannon and Bernie are similar figures.
Yeah.
They're like mirror images of each other, except that Bernie actually has a senatorial career and Bannon's still just an outside pundit who's brought out to like assure the troops or whatever, or keep part of the populist end of the Trump coalition aligned. But it's pretty clear that Trumpism is not that at all. Not now. I mean, it was plausibly deniable in Trump 1 because Trump 1 was frustrated, but Trump 2 is not frustrated. It seems to be more chaotic, actually.
Yeah, but Trump 2 is, as an administration, is much more secure, much more stable, much more knowledgeable, and it controls all three houses.
Right.
And so that means that they don't have any more excuses.
Which also means that
kind of like Obama,
right?
In the second administration was the same thing.
And so it's actually points to the lie of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Which I think a lot of people who watch American politics would be made very uncomfortable if you have to deal with the fact that the structures that you see on the other side and the captives that you see on the other side are so similar in structure and how they get sheepdog back in. Like that. And I think the only thing that makes that not obvious is no one on the right is actually promising an outside movement from the GOP. They're promising to make the GOP whatever thing that they want to make it into. Whereas the left is kind of talking out of both sides of its mouth about what it wants to do, whatever the left is. And I'm not sure we have any idea at this point what the left is so contested that the left of capital is hard to clarify.
I'm not really convinced that there is a distinct left. I think that Bernie Sanders represents the most honest and accurate understanding of the moment. When I say the moment, I mean like the last 50 years. And I don't mean Bernie Sanders in the last 50 years. I mean Bernie Sanders in the last 20 years. Because unlike, like I was in the ISO for way too long. And I really thought, very delusional, but I really thought we were doing something counter-systemic. Bernie Sanders, when he was running for president and ever since then, is just dealing with this as it actually is, dealing with the moment without any illusions. So I respect him. I don't agree with him, but I respect him because at least he's no longer, or at least he's not pretending to be oppositional to the Democratic Party. He's talking about trying to save it, make it whatever. But at least he's, honestly representing the left of what actually exists.
The thing is, everyone talks about needing like a mass workers' party and all that, and I don't disagree with them.
No, I think let's do it.
Yeah, well, but also how the fuck are you going to do it? Because you don't just do it by calling it into existence. All that does is create a sect. You don't just do it by coming up with a program on your own with your 100 friends and calling that like a program for the working class because of some ideological clarity that you may or may not have. That's not how that comes about either.
Well, and let's be honest, you don't have it.
Right.
In reality, if you had that kind of ideological clarity, you
wouldn't be positing that kind of program at that moment.
Exactly. Right. I mean, this is why I have put in a lot of time in the Sanders moment. At this point, it's a long time past, but I wanted to find some way to do something different and just see what actually happens. Turns out nothing, but
I mean, for me, my great fear, and I don't think I talk about this enough, my great fear is that Stanislav Lem is right, and that political change is actually just stochastic, that no one's actually developing towards anything. Like, it's one meaningless event after another.
I mean that I would say that's true. At least I think I agree with that. At least it has been that way, and kind of for a long time. My fear is that it's how it will be, because I don't know. I mean, I haven't lived long enough to see anything different. But
Well,
I
I
don't just
mean,
mean in my lifetime. I mean, like, I think that since the Second World War, we're kind of still in the same doldrums as we have been in since the atomic bomb. Just more and more extreme versions of an impasse, which has always felt uncomfortable because it always has been. We just finally are like waking up to the reality that, like, oh, we're still in this cul-de-sac. Somehow we just haven't gone out and gone back to something else.
and I guess that leads me to thinking that like maybe we do need to take all these ideologies a lot more critically. Like the imminent critique doesn't need to be just the imminent critique of the left from the left, whatever the fuck that is, or of the Democrats from the left. That's a little bit clearer, but even though I'm not sure what that means, like the Democrats are so self-contested that they're basically dependent on 80-year-olds who are having their last 12 out of power, but who in their hubris will die soon. Like they're way past retirement
shows
age.
us that will happen no matter what.
Right. So, they can fight David Hogg as much as they want to, and they might win this time. They probably will. But
yeah, probably.
They will die. And there's the younger generation is between AOC and Slotkin. Right? So you got you got Pelosi on the block versus I'm basically a Republican from 20 years ago. But we are in a decadent society. That applies across the board.
Yeah, and the decadence is not a new phenomenon. It's very, very advanced. It's like a cancer which is well past being treatable.
So, a lot of people take solstice as take solace in their ideologies, getting to see past it. But then I asked them, okay, so you're right, Bernie and AOC are sheepdogging. Whether they mean to be or not is irrelevant. Although, and I do think people should be a little bit more suspect in what they ascribe as known motives to people. But in this case, I think we can assume that AOC at least knows what she's doing.
Yeah.
It also might be good that people are attracted to it, but the thing is, we know that it's not necessarily going to go anywhere. I think we already see it's not going to go anywhere. Yeah. So what do you do about that? Or, for example, that despite, all the talks about being kinder to Russia and like basically agreeing to the conditions stated forth, that Russia asked for, about recognition of Crimea and all this, and holding some of the eastern territory of Ukraine being granted by Trump, that on both sides that there's bad faith negotiations there. And that also it's not really as much of a pivot to Russia as a lot of liberals want to make it look like, because they would like to pretend that somehow that Putin and Trump are somehow each other's stooges, where the actual reality of the situation is much more bleak and brutal and is likely for all sides to fuck up. And this is where I think people miss the history of modern warfare. Since World War II, warfare tends to fuck everybody involved in it. There are exceptions, the Vietnamese to some degree, although they had to fight 2 more wars after we left.
And their losses in that war were staggering.
Yes.
Like, it's in a very similar way similar to the Soviet Union and the Second World War, like the loss of human life and of any infrastructural development is incalculable. Like, it's impossible to know where Vietnam would be today if not for the immense losses that they had to deal with I mean, they fought the war from like 1953 until like 1979.
Yeah,
They were basically a permanent state of war.
for an entire 2 generations.
Yeah.
First against the French, then against us, then against the Cambodians, and then against indirectly the Chinese.
Yeah. So I mean, we don't know what that's like, and I don't think we can really. I don't think anyone can really understand it. Even they can understand what has happened.
We have had generational wars like that, like Afghanistan, but our generational wars are not high body count for us.
No, not at all.
Right. And I mean, the Soviet Union lost half of its adult population, well, twice. Once in the Civil War, once again in World War II.
Yeah.
And then Russia did during the Soviet period, lost about, I think, a fourth to half of its male population to deaths of despair. Not even a war. Because I think the male lifespan dropped 15 years very, very quickly.
Yeah, like within, I want to say like within a year.
Yeah, it's just dramatic.
Life expectancy under Yeltsin. And honestly, if you don't understand that, then there's the Putin phenomenon seems to be this weird mystical, like it's just the Russian soul. Just
the Russians are just somehow bad.
Yeah, it's like no. If I was a Russian in 1999, I would be either dead or I'd be
if you and I were Russians in 1999, we'd most likely be dead. But
but otherwise, yeah, I
or we would have ran to the west or something cowardly.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's also true. But the fact that there are Putin supporters, enthusiastic Putin supporters,
I think is real.
The least remarkable thing the least remarkable, mysterious fact of the contemporary political landscape. It's the one thing I know for sure is that, of course, people would be pro-Putin.
Because any appearance of stability would be good. Any kind of reclaiming of national identity after being humiliated and sabotaged like that would feel pretty good.
Well, yeah, because if you think about the Soviet period, if you remember any of it, it's the last few years, it's the Gorbachev years. And then Yeltsin is the ultra-liberal period. And those are your options. And then, or you have Putin. It's of course, people are pro-Putin.
Yeah. I mean, you might have a boner for Brezhnev because that's when things seem good. But then if you think about it too long, you're like, oh, but that led us here. And,
yeah, exactly.
We're kind of in a similar position. I've actually made the argument a bunch that Trump is our Yeltsin.
Yeah.
Which also indicates that there's something worse on the horizon. And I don't even know which party it's coming from.